Next episode, OPOstories from the NBA. My today guest is Pete Chilcutt. Hello, Pete.
Hello, how are you?
Very good. And how are you?
Doing great, doing great.
Well, as when you say hello, yes to my invitation, and I prepared to the interview, there was some kind of thing that me as Orlando Magic fan who started his journey with Orlando in 1995, it's some kind of masochism because I talked with Jackie Brown. Now it's you. There was Vernon Maxwell as well, who wasn't in this NBA finals, but still make some steps to the finals during the regular season. But I'm really happy that we got the chance to talk not only about those finals, but there's also one question about this. But let's start with the beginning. How start your journey with the basketball? Was it the size or maybe something else?
I was always a bigger kid for sure. I was about 6'5" in the 10th grade, and I graduated high school about 6'7". So I don't know. That's in feet, so I don't know what that is in meters. But I know that I was a pretty big kid, and I got to go play at my dream school when I got to go to play basketball at North Carolina. So that was one of my big dreams I had, and I was able to play there under the great coach Dean Smith, and play with many great teammates like Joe Wolf and Kenny Smith and J.R. Reid, like you said, Scott Williams, George Lynch. A lot of guys that were really good players in college, but also went on to have some good NBA careers. But it all started where I grew up in Alabama, just loving to play basketball. So I worked on my game, and I didn't have any idea that I would be able to play at that high level, but I had a dream that I loved to play basketball, and that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. So who was your favorite player and the team where you were a kid with this dream to playing in the NBA?
Well, I grew up in high school right around the 80s to 82. I graduated 86. So when I first started watching basketball, you know who was on the TV? It was this guy named Michael Jordan. So he was on ESPN. They started playing a lot of the Carolina games on TV. And so I grew up right in the ninth grade and 10th grade watching him play, watching him be such a great player and win that championship at North Carolina.
Yeah, so still we are in the North Carolina. You're a best player, and when you mention about those teammates from North Carolina, it's future NBA players.
Sure.
How it was for you when this dream comes true? So it's 1991 NBA draft. You were selected with 27th pick by Sacramento Kings. How do you remember that day?
Well, I just thought back to about 2 years before that, and I had no chance to play in the NBA. So the fact that I was able to not only get drafted, but to be the last pick of the first round, I was amazingly happy and so thankful for the opportunity. But it was like a dream come true. But if you can understand my mind, I didn't even have a dream that I could do that. So it exceeded my expectations. I was thrilled to be drafted at that time and to go out to Sacramento. But when you work so hard at something, and again, I go back to when I played basketball, I think it's different. Today, kids play and they know they're going to be in the NBA. I just played basketball because I love the game. And so I didn't have anything in my mind. Now, it was a dream, but most kids have that dream that they're going to be doing this and this, but I didn't think it was really realistic. So when it actually happened in 1991, it was amazing. And I was just so excited to get a chance to play in the best league in the world.
So when you appear in the NBA, what did surprise you the most?
Well, it wasn't a surprise, but when you're playing in NBA back in those days, that there's a huge talent difference from the college to the NBA. A huge amount of everyone in the NBA was their player's best team in college, was an All-American, was really, really good. So the biggest adjustment was to be a solid player at that NBA level to try to earn playing time. Because in college, it was one thing. You you had 10 or 12 guys, but you got older, you got to be a junior and you got to be a senior. In the NBA, you don't have a lot of time to grow. You just have to kind of develop on the fly and play against the best players in the world.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that also the first steps in the team are usually when you are a rookie, that you have to be ready for all those pranks and tasks which your older teammates and vets prepare for you. What was on your rookie list when you appeared in the Sacramento?
The worst thing, and it wasn't too bad for my team, but the worst thing that we had to do as rookies was, traveling back then was a little bit different. We had a charter, but sometimes we flew commercial. A lot of times we got in really late at night. So if we flew and we had a game somewhere and we left that night, we might arrive in Houston at 2 a.m. in the morning. And we wanted to jump on the bus and go, but no, the rookies were the ones who had to help unload load the bus, carry the bags for the trainer, do all the stuff where all the older guys are already going to their beds. We had a lot of stuff like that. We carry bags. Spud Webb was one of my guys with Sacramento in Wayman Tisdale. Those are really nice guys, but they really liked bossing the rookies around. So you name it, go get me a Gatorade, go get me a hot dog, take my bag up to my room. So whatever they wanted, that's what they got.
And it was also the special for you, of course, it was rookie season, but also there was a new leader in the team, Mitch Richmond. How do you remember Mitch? Because he was a star, Hall of Famer, with great three-point shooting ability. How it was to play with him, and do you got some three-point contests during trainings?
Mitch Richmond was an amazing player, and you have to go back to the mindset of the Sacramento Kings were not very good back in those days. So we had a lot of losing seasons, and he got traded for Billy Owens, who was the first round pick. So he was probably not happy because he was leaving Tim Hardaway and Chris Mullin to come to Sacramento, and it was
around TMC.
It was a struggling move for him. So while he was not happy, Richmond has the really high character. So he gave 100% every time he went on the floor. He was a tough player, 6'5", 2 guard, a really strong player. As you said, future all-star. I think I could probably beat him in three-point shooting, but don't tell him that. The contest on our team was really between me and Jim Less. So I don't know if you remember Jim Less. Jim Less was a great three-point shooter who actually came in second in the three-point shootout, I think in like 90, 93 and 94. But I really enjoyed being on that Sacramento Kings team just because of the bonding that you do form a good team bonding even when you're losing. But it takes good character people, and there's a lot of good character people on that team.
Mm-hmm. And what about games against your teammates from North Carolina? I guess that for sure it was kind to welcoming just before the game, but during the game, do you try to be tougher for each other?
Of course, yes. I enjoyed going against like my old teammate Rick Fox or Kenny Smith. I enjoyed trying to block Michael Jordan's shot. I actually think I blocked his shot in a preseason game, but they called a foul. I couldn't believe it. Joe Wolf. I mean, I could go down the list. There's like 13 or 14 players that were in the NBA at that point from Carolina. And every night, like you said, not only would we go out to dinner and talk before the game, but we got to go out on the court. And sometimes we got to guard each other and just have a good time. It was always a fun for both sides just to play hard against someone that you went to school with.
Mm-hmm. As you said, that when you appear in the NBA, that there were some teammates from the North Carolina. I guess also that the other players who you know from the NCAA, probably some from the high school. So it wasn't just that you were alone in the league, but there were some familiar faces. For sure,
but again, you hear people talk about it right now that the NBA was different in the 80s and the 90s. It was a tough league. There were some tough guys, and they were some nice players, but there were some guys like Charles Oakley. There were some guys that Anthony Mason, Patrick Ewing, they weren't that nice. So I like to say it was a man's league back then, and there was grown men, and I was 22 years old. I don't think I was quite grown at that point compared to some of those guys. So it takes a lot of adjusting because you really do kind of change your mindset from oh, this is fun, I'm gonna go have fun playing basketball, to this is definitely a job, and it's a grown man job. So it was a little bit of adjustment just to get that mentality when you played against some of those players.
I also remember once Rick Mahorn said that he's a really nice and family guy, but on the court is something different. So what is on the court is on the court. And when I mentioned Rick, you also play a season in Detroit Pistons. I would say it was a late Bad Boys era, because there was still Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, Bill Lambert. Right. How do you remember this time? Because there were stars, but not in their prime, but still there was legends who are close to ending the career.
Sure. So I grew up watching the NBA a lot in the 80s. So I was watching the Detroit Pistons and the Lakers and the Celtics play all these great games. And I was a big watcher of Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars for sure. And so when I got to Detroit at the end, when I got traded there, I was a little bit like, this is like, they were really a bad team, like you said, that year, but it was a treat for me to be able to play with Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. Are you kidding me? Those guys were part of my childhood. Like they were really amazing players. And I tell people all the time, you know, not only did I get to play basketball for 9 years, which is a great job, but I got to play with some really awesome players. Like that, you name some top players that you can think of, and I may have played with them, and that's just a treat and a joy that I could play with Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars and some of the other guys on that team. I take away some of those memories, and like you said, it was not a great season, but I'm like, you know, when I talk now, I just remember how awesome it was to be on the court with those guys.
And after 93-94 season, you played for a while in Italy, in the Illy Cafe Trieste. How do you remember time spent overseas in Europe?
Yeah, Italy, and where we were in Trieste, up in the north part off the sea, was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful city. We had an apartment to look down over the Adriatic Sea. I was there with my wife. We had beautiful scenery. A smaller town, so not a lot of English speaking. So I remember we'd have to go around and kind of like use our hands and try to get what we wanted by using figures of speech and our hands. But the non-basketball part was amazing. We really enjoyed that part. The basketball part was a little, sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad. I didn't have a great experience, and it was, it was a lot of pressure to win in those little teams in Italy. So we won. 1 week we'd win. The coach was really happy. The next week we lose. He cuts one of the players. So it was very high and low. And we just
like in Italy.
Yeah. So one player I played with named Larry Middleton, and we played in a game at home. He scored 49 points, and I scored 31 points. And the headline in the paper was "Duo Americanos score 80 points." Okay, and a week later we lost, and they cut Larry Middleton from the team. A week after he scored 49 points. And then the coach tells me if we don't win, then he's going to cut me next. So it was high. It was a lot of stress, and I enjoyed my time over there. It was really fun. But after about 3 months and a couple of threats from the coach like that, I was like, you know what? I don't know that this is what I want. I don't like being threatened all the time. So I think I'm gonna go back to America. And I actually was probably thinking I was going to retire. I had no idea that I was going to be able to go to the Houston team. So I was it made basketball not fun. Some of the stuff that was going on. So I was like, yeah, I think this is about it, right? So I think I'm going to hang it up. So I went home with the idea that I might retire.
So I guess that when you came back to the NBA with this question in the mind, is it a good moment to retire? So you cannot choose better, because Houston Rockets was in the really good shape. We know what was at the end of the season, but that's from the beginning of the season. There was this atmosphere in the team that, yes, we are ready to get the second in the row.
Those 2 years in Houston were really the only 2 years that I ever won in the NBA. So every other season was a losing season. So think about that. So 7 years of losing, but the Houston years were 2 years of winning. And what you learn is that, like you said, that the guys on the team, I came in after they won that first championship. So you know, one thing is that they've already done what you want to do. They've already won everything. So now you're talking about not only can I get a winning season, but these guys have goals. We need to win again. And then we talk about some of the guys that I was playing with. Like I said, I was so lucky to be on that team with those awesome players. I mean, we talk about all the names, but there's like 7 or 8 guys that are amazing, and everyone knows who they are still because of such a great team we had. So they had that mentality, like you said, that we're going to win again. And the guys that were saying that were Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler and Kenny Smith. And like they almost made it happen because we didn't have a great regular season. We had, I think, 43, 45 wins and struggled in some of the early playoff games. But, there's something to be said about what Rudy T said, that the great coach for the Rockets, and as you can never underestimate the heart of a champion, because so many times you thought we were out, and next thing you know, we find a way to win, and we keep going. And that was throughout the season, but also throughout the playoffs.
Yes, and I think that what Coach Tomjanovic said, it shows in the NBA Finals, because the team Orlando Magic was young with the stars who just want to feel they want to really want to win this championship, but still they playing with the champs from the year before. And game 1, amazing game from your North Carolina teammate, Kenny Smith,
Yes.
with all those threes. And how do you remember it? Because you played in 3 games, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I guess it's not easy to be on the bench where there are such of emotions and you cannot play.
Sure. So what happened was, people probably don't remember this as much, but the first 3 playoff series I actually started. And we won against Utah. We won against the Phoenix Suns, and then we won against San Antonio. And Rudy T, we made a change during the San Antonio series where he said, we're going to start Robert Horry at the 4, and we're going to go a little smaller lineup. How can you argue with the results, right? So it actually worked out great. But as you said, so I went from starting in the playoffs to getting spot minutes in the finals. So while that was tough from a player's perspective, when you get to a certain level, you do kind of have to say, hey, I'm in the NBA on a team that's in the finals. Like, it's not all bad. I'm a very big team player for sure. And so while I wanted to be on the court, I was definitely supporting the guys, and it was tough to watch, but boy, that was an awesome team. So I'm not gonna worry about the end of the season as much as what happened during the whole season, and we won the championship. So it was awesome.
Of course, as a Orlando Magic fan, I remember the game and all those free throws shoots in the ending of the Nick Anderson from the opponent perspective, because it looks like Nick Anderson came from his normal level deeper, definitely deeper, and he wasn't the same player. Was it seen on the court as well?
I tell you what, a lot of people can look at that result and say that we swept them 4-0. I really believe that team was super talented, and I'm not going to say Nick Anderson. He is an awesome player, but if he makes those free throws, this series may go 6 or 7 games. That was a huge turn in that game to lose that game, because that gave us all the momentum going back home. I think if we split 1-1 in Orlando, there's a fair chance that we don't sweep them, because people just forget that team was no slouch. I mean, they, like you said earlier, they had some great players, young players. They had a deep team. They had a good coach. I don't remember Nick Anderson's play dropping off after that game. I just remember their whole team was almost deflated because of what happened. It almost like they kind of had that little sigh. And as a team, I don't think they played as well in game 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm. And after playing in the team with the winning culture, you continue your career in Vancouver Grizzlies, young team, young roster with the perspective Brian Reeves player and Sharif Abdurraouf. Rahim, how do you remember that team and how it was to be, I guess, the vet in this young roster?
Well, It was so again. I had my 2 years of a good team, and they said no, you need to go back to a bad team. So I went to the Vancouver Grizzlies, like you said, and I'll tell you the good part for sure. My wife and I loved Vancouver, the city. The city was amazing. So probably one of my favorite cities that I played in. And the coach that I had my second and third year, Brian Hill, was my favorite, almost one of my favorite coaches as well. He was a great personal communicator and a great coach. So from that perspective, I really enjoyed it. And I was able to play, basically 3 years in one city, which for me was great. So I enjoyed to kind of get to be on the team for 3 years and see it develop. And then we got to talk about how we did. Like, as you mentioned, we didn't do very well. It was a struggle. And when you lose a lot, it's not fun. So what I took away from that was we had Bryant Reeves, Sharif, we had Mike Bibby, we had George Lynch was up there for a little while with me. We had some really good people on that team. And again, good city, good people. We worked hard. I was playing basketball for a living. We didn't win very much. So there's always a negative, but I think there's a lot of positives from my time up there, and I really enjoyed it. It was fun up there in Vancouver.
You've got, let's say, taboo topics with Coach Brian Hill, like this 1995 finals, or?
He was a really good guy, so I could joke around a little bit with him about that. But the team he had, like, I just don't think he got a fair shake in Orlando. Like, I thought he should have probably never been fired there, because these teams, sometimes they lose a couple games or lose a series, and then maybe they make changes. But I thought he was a great coach for that team.
Mm-hmm. And so we've got the 1999 and 2000 season, your last season, 3 teams. Did you try to come back to the league?
Well, that I started, in Utah for about 6 months. So again, only 6 months, but I got to play with Karl Malone and John Stockton and Jeff Hornacek. I mean, think about, again, I'm talking about the players that I got to play with. From that perspective, I was so lucky to play with those guys. I didn't last there very long, about 6 months. Then the Clippers, then Cleveland, then back to the Clippers. I kind of knew at that point that this may be my last season because I was bouncing around so much. But at that point, I was just trying to enjoy basketball again. A lot of people forget, and I have to remind them that I say, do you know what Shaquille O'Neal's career high is? Do you happen to know?
No.
61 points. Do you know when he got that career high? In the year 2000, when I was guarding him. So when I was with the Clippers and he was with the Lakers, we played the game in the Staples Center. And there's a little story. It was his birthday. He wanted some extra tickets from the Clippers. They wouldn't give him any tickets, so he got kind of angry. And it was me and I don't know if you remember Keith Kloss, Boss Kloss, Michael Olowokandi. We were all and Anthony Avent were all trying to guard him, but he scored 61 points. And I went back to the tape and I watched the tape. He only scored 35 on me. Yes. He was so. Now remember, Orlando, young Shaq, really, really strong, athletic. But he got around 2000, 2001 when he was at his prime, I think. Those were his best years. And he was so powerful, so strong. And what am I going to do? I was 240 pounds. I believe he was probably a little bit more than that. So it was a really tough matchup for anybody, but especially me.
So you were the victim of lack of empathy from ticket office, I guess.
Yes. But that's one of my. It wasn't a great memory, but again, it's one of those fun stories I get to tell people sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So if you mentioned that you play with a lot of great players, all-stars, future Hall of Famers. So if you could create all-time Pete Chilcutt teammates team,
oh boy,
could be one by pure talent and the second by relation.
Oh boy. Okay, well, let me tell you, I've had the question a lot, like who was the best player? And so but you're making it a little tougher because you want a whole team. So let me go with. I'm definitely going to go with. Woo! Now, I had to play with them? Is that the prerequisite?
Yeah. So, but if you want, you could also create the third team.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go who I played with. That's a little easier. So at the center, there's the guy named Hakeem Olajuwon. Okay, he's definitely and at the four, I'll put Karl Malone. And I put those two first because the guys I played with, those were the best players I've ever played with, and it was amazing to watch them play from a teammate perspective. And what I took away from my time was they have natural talent for sure. A lot of people have natural talent, but what they could do was make shots that were impossible. The impossible shots, they could make them look easy. I mean, some of the shots when Hakeem Olajuwon would do his dream shake and his fadeaway, and Karl Malone would hit this turnaround jumper. I mean, they were so, it didn't matter who was guarding them. You know, they could be guarded by the best defense and they could always score. And then Hakeem was such a good rebounder and defender, and Karl Malone was so big and he ran the court so hard. And both those guys just competed so hard. So that's my 4-man and my 3-man. I'm sorry, my 4-man and my 5-man. Who is my 3-man? Let's see. Three-man. You know, the people I played with, it's tough because I got a Robert Ory, I got a Sharif Abdul-Rahim. That's a tough call. Let me think on that. I'm gonna go back to the 2. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Mitch Richmond over Joe Dumars. Just because Mitch Richmond was such a strong and powerful player. When I played with him, he was at his prime, and Joe Dumars was coming after his prime. At the point guard, again, that's a tough one. But I'm going to say, I mean, you play with Kenny Smith and John Stockton and Isaiah Thomas and Mike Bibby. I mean, whoo, that's a tough choice. Just from a numbers perspective, I'm going to have to go with John Stockton. But I'm going to tell you, it was a privilege of mine to play with Isaiah Thomas. I've always considered him like if John Stockton's 1, he's like 1B. He's really, really up there on my list too. And at the 3-man, I mean, am I missing anybody like besides Ori and Raheem? I think I'm going to go with Big Shot Bob for the 3-man because he made so many big shots that you want that guy. And he was, if you don't remember him, so long and athletic, and he could jump and shoot that ball. So once he developed into that player with Houston, I think that's a pretty solid starting 5.
That's right, definitely.
Yeah.
With Robert Ory's, sometimes the discussion about introducing him to the Hall of Fame. Because one is what you see as a fan, that you see statistics, that you see that somebody was or wasn't in the All-Star game. There's also a question about the rings, and for sure it will be really hard to get it on one hand. What makes him such incredible player?
Well, I think when you talk about all the great players, so you talk about a guard or a 2-guard or a center or a wing, I think to me, what sets some of the players in the middle, the wing players out, is that they can do a little bit of everything. So Shaq, Hakeem, MVPs, All-Stars, Hall of Fame, but can they bring the ball up the court? No. Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton, great guards, but can they post up? No. So in the middle, you have the wings who can go down and post up. They can dribble more. So Robert Ory was so valuable to our team because he could defend, he could rebound, he could shoot, he could post up, he could do everything. So while I'm not saying that's the major factor, I think for Robert Ory, that's why he was so valuable, that he could do, like, he wasn't a shooter. Like, we didn't put him in to shoot, we put him in to play. He could shoot, but he was a great defender. You remember how long he was. So Robert Ory was so good on his teams because he wasn't just one-dimensional, but he could rebound. I mean, how many games did he get 10 rebounds, or how many games did he guard the best player? So he did all the little things that got him on the court. And then when he starts making the game-winning shots, I mean, that's just end of the story. I mean, you can make a couple and say, okay, but when you make a lot of them, like, when you get a nickname, Big Shot Bob, I mean, come on. So I think his the fact that he was able to do so many things, his flexibility in that regard was one of the best factors.
Pete, thank you very much. It was my last question. It was nice to come back to the 90s to hear the story from NBA Finals and also about your career. So thank you very much. And again, Nice to hear. It was nice to talk with you.
Yeah, for real. I'm glad. I'm sorry it took a long time. I've just moved back to the North Carolina after being on the West Coast, so I'm a little bit slow on getting back to you on the communication. But I'm glad I was able to do it, and look forward to hearing it.
Okay, so thank you very much, and enjoy the afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Good seeing you.
Okay, goodbye.